Dawn arrived on County Road 9 like a guilty thing. Pale, reluctant, pressed under a low lid of cloud that turned the world the color of wet steel. The roadside ditch was swollen from last night's rain, brown water sliding past reeds and crushed cans. But Rex did not care. The K9 dug as if the ground had committed a crime, dirt and black water flinging behind him in sharp bursts, claws scraping stone, then shifting to a flat, ugly thud that made every officer on the shoulder go still. Deputy Nolan hovered with a flashlight he did not need, breath puffing in nervous clouds. Beside him stood a little girl in a blue sweater, soaked at the cuffs, hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes too wide for mourning. She did not cry. She simply pointed, one small finger locked on the hole Rex was tearing open, and whispered, "There, there," like the words were the only thing holding her together. Officer Mara Klein crouched at the ditch's edge, boots sinking, one hand out as if she could calm the air itself. "Easy, Rex," she said. But the dog was not frantic. He was certain. His ears were forward, his body tight with purpose, and every breath came in short huffs through his nose as he tasted the ground. Something down there had a scent, a story, a wrongness that pulled him like a magnet. Nolan didn't ask the girl why she was here, not yet. He watched her finger and the way it refused to shake, like she had already spent all her fear earlier and had nothing left but direction. Rex halted for half a second, head cocked, then dug again with renewed fury. The scrape changed pitch. Not rock, not pipe, plastic. A squared black edge surfaced against the mud, taped, slick, and unmistakably man-made. Nolan's voice thinned. "That's not trash." Mara swallowed, shoulders tightening, and tapped her body cam to confirm it was running. "Sweetheart," she asked without taking her eyes off the hole, "what made you come here?" The child's lips parted, but only a shaky breath came out. Her finger did not waver. Rex backed off just enough to give Mara space, yet he kept watch, amber eyes fixed on the object like a sentry guarding a secret. Mara slid 2 fingers into the mud, feeling along the buried edge. Smooth plastic, a seam, layers of tape. She hooked her fingertips under it and pulled. It did not budge. Heavy, like it was anchored on purpose. She shifted her stance, braced her boot against the ditch wall, and tugged again. The object rose an inch, mud sucking at it with a wet protest. And her glove brushed something cold and metallic that did not belong in a roadside ditch. Her hand jerked back so fast she nearly fell, heart punching her ribs. Rex let out a low growl that was not aggression. It was warning. The girl whispered again, smaller now, almost a prayer. "Please." From the road, wind carried diesel, rain, and a faint chemical bite. Mara stared at the black, sealed edge peeking from the mud and realized the air felt heavy because this was packed, deliberate, and waiting. Warm morning light made the town look innocent, as if the sky itself had agreed to keep secrets. Main Street stretched neat and sleepy beneath maple trees, rinsed clean by the storm, leaves glittering like small coins. A corner store bell chimed whenever someone pushed through the glass door, and the sound carried down the block with a friendliness that felt rehearsed. Pickup trucks idled at the only stoplight. A school bus sighed at the curb. A delivery van crawled past the diner. People smiled, nodded, talked about coffee and Christmas lights, and pretended the world was as simple as the sun on windows. But under that warmth ran a hairline crack, and you could feel it if you listened between sounds. Lila Santos walked the sidewalk with her chin level and her shoulders squared. Dignity held like an umbrella you didn't open unless you had to. She was Mia's guardian now, aunt by circumstance more than blood. And her gentleness lived in small motions. A steadying hand at Mia's back, a scarf tucked up against the girl's throat, a calm voice that refused to tremble. Mia wore a blue sweater, a size too big, sleeves covering her knuckles, and she stayed close enough to Lila that their steps almost matched. Her eyes flicked to parked cars and dark windows as if shapes could jump out of reflections. When Lila asked if she wanted breakfast, Mia only swallowed and nodded without looking up. Across the street near the hardware store, Staff Sergeant Daniel Rourke stood with a paper cup of coffee cooling in his hand. Retired didn't mean relaxed. His posture still carried years of discipline, and his gaze moved in quiet sweeps that missed nothing. Most folks called him Dan because they liked him, but they still said it carefully. At his left heel sat Rex, black and tan, muscles packed tight under a glossy coat, eyes calm but watchful. Rourke held the leash loosely, yet Rex didn't wander. He tracked the world the way a professional reads a map. Rex's ears twitched at the store bell, then at the distant clank of a dumpster lid, then at something no one else reacted to. He rose, slow and controlled, and turned his head toward the alley behind the diner. He stared into that shadow as if he remembered it. Rourke followed the line of that stare and saw only damp brick, stacked crates, and a puddle reflecting sky. But Rex's nostrils flared, tasting the air with a focus that made the back of Rourke's neck tighten. Lila noticed the dog's stillness and paused. Mia noticed too, and her fingers dug into Lila's coat seam. Rourke met their eyes, offered a small nod that was more promise than greeting, and watched Mia's face harden into something older than 8 years. She didn't point here, not yet. But the way she looked past the town's sunny mask told him she already knew where the trouble lived. And worse, she knew it was buried. By late morning, the town gathered in its usual safe place, the small park beside the rec center, where a food stand operated out of a silver trailer, the kind that sold coffee, hot dogs, and warm pretzels to parents killing time between errands and school pickup. The air smelled like fried onions and damp grass warming in sunlight, and laughter came in short bursts from the playground, bright enough to make you believe in normal. Lila stood near the trailer window with Mia tucked at her hip, one arm curved protectively around the girl's shoulders while she counted bills with steady hands. Mia's blue sweater was still a little too big, sleeves bunching at her wrists, and she stared at the gravel under her shoes as if it could open. Rex was there too, sitting in a calm heel at Rourke's left, leash slack, eyes moving with that slow, scanning patience that wasn't relaxation so much as readiness. Rourke hadn't planned to follow them, not in a way that would embarrass Lila. But he'd seen the way Mia tracked windows earlier, and he knew a child didn't look like that without cause. The trailer's service bell pinged when Lila stepped forward, and that small chime was the last friendly sound before the mood snapped. A voice cut across the park, loud, casual, confident, like it belonged to someone who never paid consequences. Well, look what wandered out. People turned, then looked away just as fast. A man in a dark jacket and work boots strolled up with 2 friends behind him, shoulders wide, grin sharp. His hair was buzzed close, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as if he didn't need them to threaten. He stopped too close. Inside the space decent people left for breathing, and aimed his attention at Mia like she was an object someone had misplaced. "You're back in public," he said, eyes bright with performance. "Thought you'd learned?" Lila's spine straightened, her expression polite in the way a locked door is polite. "We're just getting lunch," she replied, voice calm, words chosen like stepping stones. The man laughed as if she'd told a joke for his benefit. He leaned slightly, angling his body so his shadow fell over Mia, and Mia flinched so small most people pretended not to see it. A mother near the swings pulled her child closer. An older man at a bench stared hard at his phone. Someone by the trailer muttered, not quite under their breath, "Don't get involved," like it was a local rule carved into the town's bones. The bully's grin widened at the silence, fed by it. "You know," he went on, voice rising so others would hear, "people get ideas. They start thinking they're special. They start pointing at things that ain't their business." His eyes flicked toward Mia's hands, as if he'd seen that finger aiming at the ditch. That's how accidents happen. Lila's hand tightened around Mia's shoulder, not to hurt, just to anchor. "Step back," she said, still controlled, but the air around her felt thinner. Rex's posture changed. Not a lunge, not a bark, just a subtle lift of his head, a stillness that pulled attention like gravity. Rourke moved before anyone could decide to be brave. He stepped into the space between the man and Lila. Body angled, shoulders relaxed, voice quiet. "That's far enough," he said. And the calmness in his tone carried more force than shouting. He didn't puff up. He didn't threaten. He simply occupied the line the bully wasn't allowed to cross, and Rex rose with him, perfectly aligned, eyes fixed, breathing steady. The bully stopped, surprised for half a heartbeat. Then his gaze slid over Rourke's face, down to the dog, then back up. And something clicked behind his eyes. Recognition. He smiled slowly, like a door opening. "Well," he said, almost pleased. "Look who's in town." Rourke didn't flinch at the recognition. He treated it like weather. Noticed, accounted for, not allowed to steer him. He kept his stance neutral, hands open at his sides. Body positioned so Mia and Lila were behind his left shoulder, and Rex was a half step forward where he could see everything. "Morning," Rourke said, as if they were neighbors passing at a mailbox. His voice was level, almost bored, but his eyes were working, cataloging. The bully's weight distribution, the angle of his shoulders, the distance of the two friends behind him, the way the crowd held its breath. He clocked the woman at the picnic table pretending to scroll while filming sideways, the teenager with earbuds who wasn't listening to music at all, and the man across the street leaning against a faded sedan, cigarette unlit, watching too hard. Rourke let his gaze drift past the bully for a fraction of a second, just enough to catch the sedan's plates and the way its driver's side window was cracked open despite the chill. Then he reached into his jacket pocket with a slow, non-threatening motion and thumbed his phone screen on. No announcement. No theatrical, "I'm recording." Just quiet evidence. The kind that held up when people started lying. "You're crowding them," Rourke said softly, eyes back on the bully. "Take 2 steps back and we all go home thinking the sun's still shining." The bully's grin tightened. "Still giving orders, Sergeant?" he asked, voice playful. But there was hunger underneath it. "You're not on base anymore." Rourke nodded once. "No. Which is why I'm asking instead of commanding." He angled his head slightly, the way a man might do when he's genuinely trying to help someone save face. "You don't want this to be the moment everyone remembers you by." A few people shifted, discomfort rippling through the bystanders like wind through tall grass. The bully glanced around, feeding off the attention, but then Rex did something that stripped the performance away. The dog didn't bark. He didn't strain. He simply planted. Front paws squared, muscles locked, head turned with absolute focus toward that faded sedan across the street. His stare was so intense it was almost a physical beam. Rourke felt the leash go taut, not from pulling forward, but from Rex bracing as if ready to spring sideways. The bully noticed it too. His eyes flicked to Rex's line of sight, and for a brief second, The grin faltered. Rourke followed Rex's gaze just enough to confirm the sedan's occupant had shifted in the seat, pretending not to notice while clearly listening. A watcher. Maybe more than that. Rourke returned his attention to the bully, lowering his voice even further so only the man in front of him could hear. "You came here loud," Rourke said. "That tells me you want a reaction. I'm not giving you one." He let the words hang, then added, "But I am documenting everything. So choose your next sentence carefully." The bully's nostrils flared, irritation flashing. But he forced the grin back into place like a mask. "Document away," he said, spreading his hands in mock innocence. "We're just talking." He took one slow step back, not because he respected Rourke, but because something across the street had just become less controlled. "Listen," he continued, voice louder now for the crowd. "We all want the same thing. Cooperation, peace. Folks around here know how to keep things smooth." He leaned in just enough to make the hairs on Mia's neck lift, then stopped short of Rourke's boundary. "And when people don't cooperate," he murmured, almost kindly, "bad luck follows them. Flat tires, lost pets, accidents, that kind of thing." Lila's breath caught, quick and quiet, but she didn't speak. Mia's fingers clamped onto Lila's sleeve like she was holding onto the only solid object in a shifting world. Rourke held the bully's eyes, expression unreadable. "Who are you telling them to cooperate with?" he asked. Simple as that. The bully's smile widened again, pleased by the question, as if it proved the trap was working. He shrugged, backing away another step. "You'll figure it out," he said. "Everybody does." Then he tipped an imaginary hat toward Mia, an insult disguised as courtesy, and turned, strolling off with his friends like he'd just finished a friendly conversation, leaving the park full of people who suddenly remembered errands they needed to run. Across the street, the faded sedan's engine turned over. Rex's stare didn't follow the bully. It stayed locked on that car as it rolled slowly away, like the dog had just marked a thread in a web. The park tried to return to normal, the way a person forces a smile after being threatened. Stiff, unconvincing, held together by habit, while Rourke kept his body between Lila and the path the bully had taken. Phone still quietly recording until the last set of boots faded beyond the rec center. Rex settled again, but his calm wasn't comfort. It was containment, like a door shut over something still moving. Lila exhaled in a slow line, eyes glossy but steady, and thanked Rourke with a look more than words. Mia, however, didn't return to the swings or the food stand. The moment the bully disappeared, the girl's attention snapped away from the crowd and latched onto the tree line at the edge of the park, where wet branches hung low and the ground dipped into a shallow drainage channel that ran toward the back of town. Rourke saw it happen in the smallest ways. Mia's shoulders tightening, her feet shifting as if drawn by a magnet, her gaze tunneling into the shadowed woods like she was listening to something calling her name. Lila's hand was on her shoulder 1 second. Then someone asked Lila a question. An older woman with worry in her eyes, whispering, "Are you okay?" And in that half-beat of distraction, Mia slipped free. Not running, not panicking, just moving with the silent urgency of a child who has made a decision and can't be talked out of it. "Mia," Lila started, turning. But the girl was already crossing the grass toward the trees, blue sweater flashing between picnic tables. Rourke followed instantly, not fast enough to frighten her, but fast enough to stay close. "Rex," he murmured, and the dog rose with him, leash loose, ears forward. Mia reached the edge of the wood line where the park's mowed grass gave up to weeds and damp leaves, and she stopped at a place that looked like nothing, just a shallow dip where rainwater would collect, a muddy seam between roots and ditch. She turned back to them, face pale, mouth trembling, and lifted her arm. One finger extended, the same gesture from the roadside at dawn. "There," she whispered, and the word landed like a rock dropped in a well. Rourke crouched to her level without touching her. "Why there?" he asked gently. But Mia's eyes slid away, ashamed and scared at the same time, as if answering would get someone hurt. Rex didn't need the explanation. The instant Mia pointed, his entire body changed. Mission mode engaged so cleanly, it was like watching a switch flip. He surged forward, not wild, not messy, but precise, pulling the leash in a straight line to the exact spot Mia indicated. No circling, no searching. His nose hit the mud, inhaled once, and his paws started digging with disciplined fury. Wet earth sprayed back, dark and heavy, clumping on Rourke's boots. The smell rose sharp, mud, rot, and underneath it, something chemical that didn't belong in forest soil. Rourke's heart thudded hard, not from surprise but from confirmation. Mia hadn't guessed. She knew. Lila caught up behind them, breathless, hand over her mouth. "Mia, baby, what are you—" she began, but the words died as Rex hit something solid. The sound changed. Scrape, scrape, then a dull knock that made the hair on Rourke's arms lift. Rex dug around it, careful now, like he'd found a bone that wasn't meant for chewing. A hard edge emerged, black plastic slick with mud, wrapped in silver tape that glinted even in the shade. Rourke reached for his phone again with his free hand, angling the lens down into the hole. "Stay back," he told Lila softly, then glanced at Mia. The girl stood frozen, fingers clenched in the hem of her sweater, eyes locked on the widening gap in the earth, like she was watching the ground confess. Rex pawed at the tape, then stopped abruptly, head cocked. For a split second, everything went quiet. The park noise distant, birds silent, even the wind holding its breath. From below the plastic edge came a faint mechanical sound, so small it might have been imagined if Rex hadn't stiffened at the same time. A crisp little click, like a latch releasing, or a device waking up. The click barely had time to settle in the air before the town's comfort blanket authority arrived to smother it. Tires crunched on the gravel path behind the trees, slow and unhurried, like whoever was coming expected the world to wait for them. And then Sheriff Hal Drummond stepped into the wood line with 2 deputies trailing him, hat tipped back, cheeks pink from the cold, smile already in place. He looked like the kind of man who'd wave at a parade and buy cookies from a fundraiser, all folksy warmth and practiced ease, until his eyes landed on the hole and the black, taped edge showing through the mud, and the smile tightened just a fraction too fast. "Well now," Drummond said, voice light, almost amused, as if he'd walked in on kids building a fort. "What have we got here, Sergeant? Treasure hunt?" One deputy chuckled on cue. Lila stiffened, hand hovering near Mia as if bracing for impact. Rourke stayed crouched, Rex at his side like a living barricade, phone still pointed at the evidence. "Sheriff," Rourke replied evenly, not rising to the bait. "We have a child pointing to buried property and a canine alerting with certainty. There was a mechanical sound from below. I'm requesting we treat this as potential evidence and secure the scene." Drummond waved a gloved hand, dismissive, stepping closer than he should have. "Ah, come on," he said with an indulgent grin, eyes flicking toward Mia. "Kids get spooked. They see things, they tell stories. That's how imagination works. Right, sweetheart?" Mia's chin trembled, but she didn't answer. The sheriff's gaze returned to the hole, and for one quick heartbeat, Rourke saw something unguarded flash there. Worry, not curiosity. Before the folksy mask snapped back into place. "It's probably nothing," Drummond continued, louder, as if speaking to the invisible audience of the town. "Some old trash someone dumped years ago. We don't need to tear up county property because a dog got excited." He leaned down, reaching toward the taped edge with the casual confidence of a man who believed rules were for other people. Rourke's voice sharpened without rising. "Stop," he said, a single syllable with steel under it. Drummond paused, hand hovering, and smiled again, this time not friendly. "You telling me what to do in my jurisdiction?" he asked, tone still light, but the air had cooled. "I'm telling you chain of custody matters," Rourke said, lifting his phone slightly so it was obvious the camera had a clear view of the sheriff's hand. "If this is evidence, your fingerprints on it compromise the integrity. We mark it, photograph it, call in the proper unit, and document every movement. That's procedure." Drummond straightened, eyes narrowing like a man hearing a language he didn't like. "Procedure," he repeated, tasting the word. "Sergeant, you're retired. You're a citizen. Let us handle it." He motioned to the deputies, and one of them shifted as if ready to take the leash or usher Rourke back. Rex didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He simply lifted his head and let out a single low growl. Quiet, controlled, professional, directed not at the deputies, but at Drummond himself. The sound wasn't anger. It was a warning delivered with absolute clarity. You are the threat. Drummond froze for half a second, and the color in his cheeks wasn't from cold anymore. "Easy," he muttered, stepping back a fraction while pretending he hadn't. Rourke didn't move, didn't blink, didn't give the sheriff room to rewrite what just happened. "No one touches it until it's logged," Rourke said, calm as stone. "And I want an outside evidence tech, now." Drummond's smile returned, too quick, too bright, like a curtain yanked closed. "Outside?" he echoed, laugh forced. "For a bit of buried junk?" His eyes flicked to the deputies, an unspoken order, then back to the hole, and that same flash of fear threatened to leak out again, before he buried it under charm. "Let's not make a spectacle," he said softly, almost pleading. And that was the moment Rourke understood something that twisted his stomach. The sheriff wasn't annoyed by the disruption. He was scared of what was in the ground. And in this town, fear in a man like Drummond meant someone else held the real power. The town's warmth didn't reach the second floor of Caldwell Development's office, where the blinds were half closed even in daylight, and the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and cold coffee, like cleanliness used to hide something. In a room too quiet for honest work, a polished desk sat under framed photos of ribbon cuttings and smiling officials, and three men spoke in low voices as if the walls had ears, which, in this town, they usually did. The first man, in a tailored coat that cost more than most people's monthly rent, tapped a pen against a legal pad with patient irritation. "We are not doing this again," he said, soft but sharp, the tone of someone who didn't often hear the word no. The second man, Sheriff Hal Drummond, sat opposite, hat in his lap like a prop he forgot to put back on, his folksy ease gone in the tight way his fingers worried the brim. The third was broader, rougher, hands scarred like he'd built things with force, not care. He leaned against a filing cabinet, arms folded, watching Drummond the way a predator watches a gate swing. "It's contained," Drummond murmured, swallowing. "For now." "Rourke's making noise." The dog hit it. The tailored man's eyes didn't blink. "And you let him keep digging?" Drummond bristled, defensive. "I tried to shut it down. He's recording. He's insisting on chain of custody." The word sounded like profanity in that room. The broad man snorted. "Retired hero thinks he's still a badge," he said. "We can fix that." The tailored man lifted a hand, calm as a surgeon. "No theatrics," he warned. "This isn't about ego. It's about exposure." He leaned forward just slightly, pen finely still. "That item stays buried, or it gets recovered by us before outsiders touch it. Those are the only two outcomes that keep this project alive." Drummond's throat bobbed. "What if state investigators?" "They won't come if there's nothing to investigate," the tailored man cut in, voice smooth as glass. "And if they do, they'll see what we choose for them to see. That's the point of local control, Hal." The broad man pushed off the cabinet and paced to the window, peering through the blinds at the street below where ordinary people moved like pieces on a board. "We've already got witnesses," he said. "The aunt, the kid. Half the park saw me talk to them." Drummond flinched at the admission, but didn't correct him, which told the tailored man everything. "Then we make the story about Rourke," the tailored man said, as if reading from a playbook. "We paint him as unstable. We say he's harassing town officials, stirring panic. We leak that he's obsessed with conspiracies. We find a sympathetic voice to call him dangerous." Drummond's eyes darted. "He's respected." "Respect is flexible," the tailored man replied. "It bends under pressure." He flipped the legal pad around, revealing a short list: names, times, arrows. "You have a deputy with a clean smile who can express concern. A local reporter who owes us favors. A school board member who loves to protect children until it's inconvenient." The broad man's grin showed no humor. "And the kid?" he asked. "Kids forget," Drummond said quickly, too quickly. "They get scared. They stop talking." The tailored man didn't smile, but his eyes cooled. "We don't need her to forget," he said. "We need her to be discredited. Imagination. Trauma. Attention-seeking. Rapid in sympathy. People swallow sympathy easier than truth." Drummond's face went pale. "That's a child," he whispered, as if remembering morality was still an option. The broad man's gaze slid to him like a blade. "And that buried box is a liability," he said. "Which one do you think matters to the people funding this town?" The tailored man stood, smoothing his coat, the meeting already decided. "Tonight," he said, voice low, "your men secure the area without making it look like security. Tomorrow, we retrieve the item quietly. No sirens, no paperwork, no witnesses." Drummond swallowed hard. "If Rourke resists..." The tailored man leaned in close enough that Drummond could smell his cologne, and his voice dropped to a whisper that carried more threat than shouting. "Then remind him what happens to people who don't cooperate." He turned toward the door, then paused, as if remembering one last weight to place on the table. And Hal," he added, almost gently, "if this gets out, it won't be your badge that saves you." Drummond's eyes flicked up, terrified. Who's really tied to it?" he asked, because his fear needed a name to hold on to. The tailored man's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You know exactly who," he said, and he spoke the name like it was a key turning in a lock. "Councilman Everett." By afternoon, the town's sunshine felt like a spotlight meant to blind instead of warm. And every ordinary sound, door chimes, distant laughter, the soft hiss of traffic, came with an echo of something watching. Lila kept Mia close as they left the park. But the closeness didn't erase the way Mia's eyes tracked movement like a startled deer, catching reflections in storefront glass and the slow roll of vehicles that didn't need to be slow. Rourke walked them at a respectful distance, not crowding, not claiming ownership of their fear, just present the way a guardrail is present. Silent, steady, meant to keep you from going over the edge. Twice he noticed the same faded sedan drifting through intersections a block behind them. Always just far enough to claim coincidence. Once a white pickup idled too long at a curb with no hazard lights, engine rumbling, driver's face hidden behind the glare of the windshield. Rex noticed every one of them, ears twitching, head turning in small, precise angles, nostrils flaring as if the air itself carried fingerprints. When Lila's phone rang, an unknown number, she answered with a cautious, "Hello?" and listened, brow pinching, then said, "Who is this?" The line clicked, went dead, and the sudden silence felt like a hand clamped over the town's mouth. Mia flinched at the sound of the disconnect and whispered, "They do that," as if it was a rule she'd already learned the hard way. Rourke's jaw set. "We're not staying in the open," he said. Not dramatic, just certain. And he guided them away from Main Street toward a small rental house on the edge of town that belonged to an old service buddy who traveled for work and didn't ask questions when Rourke needed a place that didn't have curious neighbors. The house sat back from the road behind bare shrubs with a narrow porch, a single porch light, and windows that looked out over a drainage field and a thin line of trees. Visibility in every direction. No easy blind corners. Inside, Rourke moved with quiet competence. He checked locks, tested windows, noted the creak of the third stair, and placed a chair under the back doorknob. Not because it would stop someone determined, but because it would make a sound that couldn't be denied. He pulled the curtains without fully closing them, enough to hide silhouettes, not enough to lose sight lines. Then set his phone on the table, where it could record audio if needed. Rex stayed close, not underfoot, but positioned like an early warning system with fur and teeth, settling near the hallway where he could see both the front door and the living room window. Lila tried to keep her voice even, for Mia's sake, made tea with hands that only slightly shook, and asked Rourke what he thought was happening. But the question carried a deeper one. Why us? Rourke didn't answer with theories. He answered with actions. "No one leaves alone," he said. "No one opens the door to anyone. If you hear a vehicle stop outside, you wake me." Mia sat on the couch hugging a pillow too tight, blue sweater sleeves pulled over her fingers, gaze locked on Rex like the dog was the only honest thing in a town full of masks. Evening came early under the cloud cover, and when Lila went to check the back door, she stopped dead. The lock wasn't shattered. Too loud for that. It was simply wrong. The metal cylinder turned too easily, as if someone had tested it with a key that didn't belong. On the porch floor, tucked neatly under the welcome mat like a cruel joke, lay a folded piece of paper with one line written in block letters. "Cooperate, and this stays quiet." Lila's breath hitched, and Rourke's eyes went flat with controlled fury as he took the note without smudging it, holding it by the corner like evidence, because that's what it was. "They were here," Mia whispered, voice small. Rex rose in one smooth motion, ears up, body rigid, and before anyone could speak, he moved to the living room window and froze. No growl, no bark, just a statue of alertness aimed at the dark outside. Rourke followed, heart slowing into that strange calm that comes right before danger. And then Rex let out a low, vibrating warning that turned the air cold, because the dog wasn't reacting to a sound approaching. He was reacting to a presence already there, close enough that, through the thin gap in the curtain, Rourke caught the faint glint of something watching back from the yard. Rourke killed the living room light with one flick, guided Lila and Mia back into the hallway with a palm-up gesture that said quiet, and let Rex hold the window like a sentry while he listened for the smallest betrayals. Gravel shifting, A breath too close, the soft tick of a cooling engine. But whoever had been out there understood. Timing, because the yard gave nothing except darkness and the faint sway of bare branches. "They want us rattled," Rourke murmured, voice barely a thread, and Rex's low warning eased into silence only after the shadow outside retreated, leaving behind the kind of absence that felt deliberate. Lila clutched the note like it was poisonous, even after Rourke bagged it in a clean sandwich bag from the kitchen. And Mia sat on the floor beside Rex, one small hand resting on the dog's shoulder as if she could borrow his steadiness. The night dragged, heavy with the sense of eyes on glass. And then, near midnight, Rourke's burner phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. "I can prove it. Alone. 1240. Service alley behind the old library. Bring the dog. No cops." Lila started to protest, but Rourke's expression didn't change. It simply hardened into decision. "That's either a trap or a lifeline," he said, slipping his jacket on as if suiting up for a mission he'd hoped never to run again. "And we can't afford to ignore either." He left Lila and Mia in the safest room. Back bedroom, door closed, chair wedged, then moved with Rex through the back door and around the house where shadows would hide them better than streetlights. The town at night was quieter than it should have been, as if everyone had agreed to sleep through guilt. And the library sat dark at the edge of Main Street, with its brick walls sweating cold and its book-drop mouth gaping like it wanted secrets fed to it. In the service alley behind it, dumpsters lined up like silent witnesses. Rourke waited where a single security light cast a narrow cone, keeping Rex at heel, senses sharp. At 12:41, a figure slipped from behind the dumpster, hands visible, shoulders hunched, breath coming fast. Not the bully enforcer. This was smaller, tired, ordinary. A woman in her 30s, with a municipal badge on a lanyard, hair pulled back in a messy knot, fingers ink-stained like paperwork had been her whole life. "Don't say my name," she whispered, eyes darting to the street. "Please." Rex sniffed once and didn't growl, which was its own kind of permission. "You work for the town," Rourke said softly. "Clerk's office," she replied, voice cracking. "Records, permits, meeting minutes, the stuff nobody reads until it's too late." She swallowed hard and pulled a small sealed evidence pouch from inside her coat, the kind used for documents and flash drives, the seal unbroken. "They buried it twice," she said. "One copy goes in the ground, one copy goes in a safe. Only, the safe isn't as safe as they think." Her eyes glistened, fear fighting with something like shame. "I saw the request come through. I saw the file labels. Equipment ID. Field test. Site containment. I told myself it was construction. I told myself it was normal." She shoved the pouch toward him. Inside was a thumb drive taped to a laminated card with an alphanumeric string written in neat block letters, device ID, and a printed log stamped with town letterhead, dates, coordinates, a list of retrieval windows, and a signature line that made Rourke's stomach drop because it wasn't just a contractor or a deputy signing off. It was a council office authorization. "Everett," Rourke murmured, the name tasting like rust, and the clerk flinched as if the syllables could summon him. "They're going to take it tonight," she whispered. "From the ditch. From wherever that kid pointed. They're sending men who don't wear uniforms." Rourke slid the pouch into his inner pocket like it weighed more than plastic, mind racing through the pattern. The bully's public threat. The sheriff's panic. The watcher's sedan. The note under the mat. The mechanical click in the ground. This wasn't random intimidation. It was a documented operation with schedules and backups, and people in suits calling it progress, Rex's ears snapped toward the alley mouth, body tightening again, and the clerk's eyes went wide. "They followed me," she breathed, terror spilling over. Rourke didn't move fast. He moved right, drawing Rex close, turning his head just enough to catch the glint of headlights crawling past the end of the alley with no reason to crawl. Then he leaned toward the clerk and said the only question that mattered now, low and urgent. "How do we get this to someone uncorrupted, before the town makes all of us disappear?" Rourke didn't waste time bargaining with a rotten system. He bypassed it like an obstacle on a mission map. Because the only way to beat a closed loop of corruption was to bring in a force that didn't owe the town anything. Before dawn could bleach the night, he used the clerk's sealed drive and the printed retrieval log to trigger 2 calls. One to an out-of-county K-9 unit commander he'd served alongside years ago, and one to a state-level inspector general hotline whose existence most small-town men in polished offices pretended not to know. He spoke in the language that gets doors opened. Timestamps, device IDs, chain of custody risks, credible witness, documented interference by local authority. Then he sent the clerk's files from a secure upload point outside town limits, adding his own body cam footage of Drummond reaching for evidence and the bully's veiled threat about cooperation. By the time gray morning light returned, it didn't return alone. 3 unmarked vehicles rolled in with the quiet confidence of a storm front. 2 state investigators in plain jackets, a certified evidence tech with hard cases, and a senior K-9 supervisor who greeted Rourke with a single nod that said, "I've got it from here." The difference was immediate and undeniable. No folksy smiles, no minimizing, no casual hands-on evidence. Yellow tape went up. A scene log began. Names and times were written down like gravity. Drummond arrived with his deputies and tried to wear his friendly face. But it slid crooked the moment he saw outsiders already in control, already documenting, already asking questions that had teeth. "Sheriff," the lead investigator said evenly, "step back. We'll be conducting this recovery." Drummond protested, softly, then louder. But procedure swallowed him whole, and for the first time in years, his badge didn't sound like a key. Lila stood behind Rourke with Mia close, the girl's blue sweater bright against the dull morning, and Rex at heel, still and watchful, eyes fixed on the ditch as if he'd never stopped hearing that mechanical click. When the tech finally cleared enough mud and roots to access the black plastic edge, she paused and glanced at the device ID from the clerk's log, then nodded once to the supervisor. "Matches?" she said. The tape was cut carefully. Gloves changed. A second camera angle was added. And when they lifted the sealed container free, it came out with a wet, sucking sound that made every bystander fall silent. The object was heavier than it looked, dense, intentional. And as it cleared the mud fully, an officer nearby physically recoiled, one hand flying to his mouth. Another let out a short, involuntary gasp. The kind that happens when your brain recognizes danger faster than your pride can deny it. The room of onlookers, deputies, townspeople drawn by rumors, even Drummond, went so quiet the only sound was Rex's steady breathing and the distant drip of water from reeds. The investigators didn't dramatize what they saw. They didn't need to. They sealed it into a transport case, photographed everything, and then they started pulling threads like professionals who already knew the sweater would unravel. The first domino fell within the hour. The bully enforcer was picked up on a warrant tied to witness intimidation and surveillance. His performative grin gone the moment cuffs clicked and the crowd saw that power could be interrupted. The second domino fell by midday. Drummond was escorted to an interview room, his folksy veneer cracking under the weight of his own recorded hesitation and the unmistakable fact that he'd tried to stop proper recovery. Then the chain climbed. Permits, Meeting minutes, signatures, payments, backdated approvals, until the name Everett stopped being a whisper and became a file stamped in ink. By evening, as sunlight slanted low across Main Street, the town watched unmarked cars outside the municipal building and realized the rules had changed. People who'd muttered, "Don't get involved," now stared from sidewalks with a new, uncertain question in their faces. How long have we been living inside someone else's plan? In the days that followed, there were statements, hearings, and a slow public reckoning. Not as a montage of instant healing, but as the hard work of looking at what you allowed. Lila's dignity didn't need speeches. It returned in small, powerful moments. Walking Mia to school without scanning every window, answering the phone without fearing the dead click, letting her shoulders drop for the first time in months. And Mia, who had carried a secret like a stone in her chest, finally slept through a night without jolting awake. On the last evening of that week, as winter air cooled the porch and the town's lights blinked on one by one, Mia sat on the steps in her blue sweater with Rex beside her, the dog's body warm and steady against her knee. He wasn't digging now. He wasn't growling. He was simply there, calm, loyal, eyes soft, as if even he understood the truth that had finally surfaced. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it points, whispers there, and holds on until the right protector listens.